and welcome back to Janky AF. Now here we have a absolutely stunning 1977, is that right?
72.
It's a 1972 Triumph TR6 in a shade of red that I'm not sure of the exact name of, but let's just call it very red. And now, most people, when they see a nice little open air convertible like this, they'd wish for a gorgeous sunny day somewhere to drive and have the wind sweeping through their hair, but not here on Janky AF. No, I specifically requested from the weather gods a miserable October, drizzly, cold, rainy day, because I want the quintessential, authentic British motoring experience. So, that being said, we're about to hop into this car and take it for a little drive. I'm very, very excited. And with that, we'll tell you a brief bit about the car first, and then we'll go and drive it. So, Janky do Thanky.
Hey.
All right, let's try to make this brief because it's a long drive, and honestly, if you become obsessed with one of these and want to buy one, you'll look all this stuff up anyways. But if you do happen to drive one, there's a strong possibility that that may happen. The TR6 predictably followed the TR5 and preceded the TR7. It fairly closely resembles the TR5, which was also known as the TR250 in America, where I guess we translated the name from metric. The styling changes made to the TR6, and here's where it gets interesting, were done by none other than Karmann, the famous and now defunct German styling and design house. During this research, I learned that Karmann was no longer, and it really made me sad, an indication of the passing of the golden years of legends like Giugiaro and Gandini, and the iconic styling firms that they and others worked under for much of their careers, such as Bertoni, Pininfarina, Superleggera, and of course Karmann. But this is quite another path to go down, and I digress. The last thing I'll say about it is when I learned its styling was by a German company, my perspective on the aura of the entire car shifted in a very positive way. It feels much more European and not just strictly British, and something about this combination just gives it a uniqueness and a depth of character that I can't understate. At the very end of this video I mentioned the Blaupunkt radio, and now I know it was just a little hint to me. Aside from all that, the big thing that separated it from its peers was the six-cylinder engine, a 2.5-liter straight six that made 150 horsepower in the UK model using a Lucas mechanical fuel injection system, but only 104 horsepower here in the States, surprisingly not due to a metric conversion, but rather to dual Zenith-Stromberg carburetors. I'm still not sure why this was done, but I have to guess it was emissions. When compared with similar cars in the segment like the MG Midget, MGB, Fiat Spider or X19, and even Triumph's own Spitfire, which was being sold alongside, the six-cylinder power of the TR6 was an absolute game-changer, and even with the stock carburetor setup made somewhere around 130 pound-feet of torque. According to Bring a Trailer, it was often referred to as hairy-chested in the press, and I can personally attest to that. Speaking of auctions, the last 8 TR6s sold on Bring a Trailer ranged from $12,500 to $60,000, an incredibly wide range, which may be why Bring a Trailer says in their overview of them, this roadster is worthy of high-end collections or can be a bargain entry into your first British classic. A big Janky do thank you to Dash and his family for looking after it all these years and for letting me take the helm for a country mile or two. Starts right up. And we're off. Welcome back to Janky AF and our review of this amazing 1972 Triumph TR6. Where are my wipers?
Wipers are that funny button that's up. Just flip it flat. Yep.
Oh, okay, we got a button wiper, much like my Buick LeSabre, actually. These dainty little wipers. See how many times I can install it in the course of this review. So, as I've asked for a, we got a tiny little pedal box here, much like my Fiat. This one's not cantered over like that one is. you're sitting, feels like you're sitting on the ground in this thing. So bear with me while I get my bearings here. Wow. There's no power steering, obviously. You can almost start off right in second gear, honestly.
I think it's a lot of power.
Yeah, it's so the thing that I was so astonished by when I did my brief research on this was they only made these from 69 to 76, and I thought for such a popular car they would go longer, and obviously like Fiat X19 and MGB contemporaries like that ran for much longer duration. So in that respect, it's kind of a rare car, although I think they made over 80,000 of them. And the other funny thing was how many of them were brought to America. So I joke about this authentically British experience, and yet I believe only 8,000 stayed in Britain and Europe, and the majority of them came to the United States, so it's definitely marketed to a United States audience. It's obviously got a lot of torque because I'm in fourth gear here, and you can pretty much cruise at fourth gear. And when you take off in first, it's like a rocket. Like you gotta be ready to go. It reeks of gasoline in here, which is normal for most older cars, I would say, especially of this era and especially of this type of car. And this is what my friend Skinner, as we call him, likes to, not this gentleman, this is Dash, and Dash has been kind enough to loan us this car for the day. And this belonged to his grandfather, if I'm not mistaken, is that correct?
Yeah.
So it's been in the family since new, right? You bought it when he was new?
No, it was a friend of a cousin, and then the cousin got it, and then my grandpa got it, and then came to me.
Okay. So sometime, but it's been in the family a long time.
Yeah, like 30 years.
Boy, you really, I do, especially these wet roads, I have zero confidence, not even in the car, but in myself. So we're just gonna cruise here. The wheel is quite big, which a lot of cars without power steering were, because, you need a big wheel to torque it over. And it's exhilarating. It's very, very fun. You're sitting extremely low to the ground. It's a very intimate setting. You feel the narrowness of this car, and the tiny little wipers. And what I want to say is the proportions, these tiny little wipers and the narrow car, but everything on this car seems wide and bulbous, and I absolutely love it. I think 15-inch wheels on this car are absolutely huge. We also have a Ford Falcon that we're going to review today, a 64, and that's only riding on 13-inch wheels, and that probably, almost twice as wide as this car.
Yeah, certainly.
So it just has these almost cartoonish proportions, but in a really good way. It's muscular, it's bulbous. I really think with these big round headlights and the big cam tail in the back and everything sort of like rounds off into the middle, it's a beautiful, beautiful car. It's really one of my favorite designs of all time. And I'm just thrilled to be driving it. And this is a sporting car, but every time I think I'm going to hit the brake, I hit the gas, and that's not probably the best scenario to be in. But we're just going to be careful and take our time here. The wipers actually work quite good.
You can go down this way if you want. It's a fun route.
To the right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Ooh. Let's flip into second here. The clutch action feels pretty deep, but it's actually very easy to engage with. Doesn't feel like you're going to stall, and you have that great, my Aerostar does this too, because there's like, as soon as you let off the gas, it's almost like engine braking. It's almost like the electric cars with the regenerative braking. Really springy clutch pedal. It's a nice action. It's very easy to start to get a little comfortable in this car, although you have to know when you're driving it, if you make impact with anything at any amount of speed, you're probably going to sustain major bodily damage. So you just keep that in mind when you're driving. It's foggy, there's almost no rear visibility, and the mirrors are tiny anyway, so you almost have to pinpoint with deadly accuracy when you're going to look in the mirror and not take away from you know, your eyes on the road here. Now this car had 150 horsepower from the factory, but that was in the carbureted or carburetted models, to take on a British parlance. And in this, American models only had 104 horsepower. I'm sorry, the British models were fuel injected. The American models still only had carburation. I'm not sure why they did that, but they only had supposedly 104 horsepower. Tell me if I'm headed too fast into a corner, although the speedometer seems stuck at about 20 miles an hour, which is, you know, here on Janky AF, we like to celebrate the janky, and I think, as I was saying on another car, a broken speedometer is actually a very good thing, because you don't want to know how fast you're going. You almost want to use the road and use the guide as your guide to just, you know, if you feel like you're going too fast, you probably are. And you don't really want to measure speed, because you say, oh, in a normal car, oh, I can get down from 50 to, you know, 20 rather easily. But in this thing, you know, you don't really want to trust the brakes. You want to hope that they're there, but realize they might not be. And that's nothing against this car. That's just these older cars in general. And certainly this thing, you know, people talk about cars with a mechanical feeling. There's nothing more mechanical than this thing. I mean, is there a defroster?
Yeah.
No defroster.
Wipe it down.
Yeah, you wipe it down. The defroster is a cloth that we keep in the back seat. And this does have a rather nice sized parcel shelf in the back. As far as these cheap, I was saying my friend Skinner, he calls these whippers, or little whippersnappers, and that would be MGs, Triumphs, Fiats, and that's exactly what they are. They're little whippers, and the sensation of speed is incredible. You know, you can have fun going 30 to 40 miles an hour in this, because it's like driving a go-kart on the road.
Yeah.
It feels relatively solid. I'm not sure what the weight of this car is. We'll try to figure that out for you. But you do feel that 6-cylinder engine. Like, this certainly feels much beefier and much throatier than my Fiat, even with no exhaust on it currently. There's a stop sign. Right or left? Oh, we're on Hope. We can see. We're kind of headed towards Richfield, I guess.
Yeah, you could pop over and hit the other side of Valens Lake if you want to come back that.
Okay. The clutch kind of springy and dives right at the end, but boy, when you take off in this thing, you realize how low you are, and it pins you back a little bit and almost lurches to the rear as the engine pulls forward. It almost feels like you're popping the front wheels up. So we'll get a little bit of speed just to have fun here for a second, and that's all about I feel comfortable with right now, because we can't see anything in either direction. And this is what I wanted. This is your quintessential British motoring experience. There's nothing better. It's really so funny to think that this is a car. I mean, this was acceptable to be produced, and even, like, you know, advanced at the time when it came out, especially on the British models with fuel injection. And this thing is just a death trap. I mean, there's no getting away. There's no getting around it. You have this beautiful wood veneer dashboard, and there's several holes missing. Now, this dashboard was installed with about 3 or 4 flathead screws, one of which is missing and the other of which is about to fall out. Your tachometer goes up to 5,500 with the orange line starting at 5,000, and that makes sense. It's a, you know, it's a 6-cylinder motor, so you're probably not going to get as high revving as like a little 4-banger or something like that. My father almost purchased a Triumph TR6 in the year of our Lord 1971, when he was finishing college and about to head into the Army, and he ended up buying a Datsun 510. Now, ironically, that was a more pedestrian car, and it was a little bit of a a safer buy, I guess, on his part, but those have become extremely rare and desirable. And it's actually kind of a good comparison car with this car. So in hindsight, he probably made the right decision, because that was probably a little bit more practical than this would be. But shout out to Rick, and maybe one day we can get him behind the wheel of this to see if he feels he made the right decision or not. Now that car is long gone, and after that I believe he bought a Plymouth Volare, which I can't say is aged well in terms of great classic cars, but neither here nor there. These little bullet point mirrors are, while not very effective, are extremely sexy, as is every other part of this car. The color's fantastic. Again, I mentioned the big 15-inch wheels, and a painted steel wheel is like my favorite thing in the world. I put them on my Buick, I put them on my Transit, I'm going to put them on the Fiat, much to the chagrin of many purists. But I think they look great, and the fact that it was a factory thing is absolutely phenomenal, with your big steel rings on the outside. It's just a beautiful, beautiful look. It's incredibly attractive. And these cars were, you know, there's a reason this thing's falling apart, and it's actually doing incredible for how old it is. Original paint, we believe. And these cars were made to a price point. They were made as cheap cars because they wanted to crank them out and let people enjoy the motoring pleasure.
You're gonna want to turn it up here. A little bit more. Makes that like little white sign.
Yep.
Squint through the fog.
Now we can bop it right into second here, cruise around, and boy, I would imagine on a drier day, if you could really, you know this car well, you could really have fun whipping it through corners. It's rattly, but I gotta say, for how cheap of a car it is, it's really not bad. And it does feel pretty solid. Fairly easy to drive. You got a nice grip on this big 3-spoke steering wheel, and there's a semi-tractor trailer coming at us. That's terrifying.
There's another one.
I see what you mean. You told me about the third to second downshift, and I just did it. Kind of lurches you. Whoa! I hope you can hear us talking over all this noise. And forgive me if my thoughts aren't completely coherent, but just trying to stay alive at this point. But that low seating position, it always feels like you're angled upward, it's really great. You have an extremely long hood, and you can see all of it out in front of you, which is a very beautiful thing to see, that bright red bonnet and those big rounding beautiful arches around the big headlights. There's not a bad angle on this car. It's so simple, and the little sort of indentations and grooves they do put in it are just that perfect accent of design. Like Dash was saying earlier off camera, like it's amazing that these are all designed on slide rules. Like it's just sort of the golden era of car design. And even though the 70s were not a great era of cars, a lot of these designs just sort of soldiered on unchanged for many years. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's no tinkering, there's no facelifts, maybe minor ones, I don't know. You could argue with me, the Triumph loyalists out there. But you really do, you can tell that you have a lot of torque in this car. I mean, it definitely feels like a 6-cylinder, and while there's not, tons of power, it's very ample. I mean, this car wants to run. Like, I know that's another cliche, but as soon as you pop it into first gear and start to let that clutch out, there's really not a lot of creeping. It just wants to run.
Yeah, I spin out on the gravel almost every time.
Yeah.
Driveway.
Yeah, well, spinning out is definitely much cooler than stalling it.
Yeah.
So if given the choice between those two, that's what you're gonna do. Boy, we're gonna go back and have some Earl Grey tea and eat some scones or something. This is just Viva la Britain on this one. And we could be in upstate New York, we could be in Essex or Kent or Surrey or something like that. Granted, in that case, we'd be on the wrong side of the road, and so would the steering wheel, but again, that's neither here nor there. So hopefully some of the outdoor cameras are capturing some of the absolutely beautiful, lush scenery. It's October here, but it's still actually a pretty warm day despite the rain. And, well, yeah, it almost, you know, if you want to punch it, but you can really just ride it in third or fourth gear, and it doesn't feel like it's bucking or wanting to stall on you or anything like that. You have to reach for another gear. Certainly pulling up a hill is another story. And that heavy, you know, non-power steering, it's actually quite confidence inspiring. The car is not jittery or rattling around on you any more than the body is, but the steering feels very, very precise and heavy, and it's very nice. So now where are we?
You're gonna want to go that way.
Yep. Anything coming there?
You look good.
Do a little pull here. Boy, it is just an absolute treat to drive. And you don't feel like you need any more than 4 gears either. I mean, certainly a 5th would be nice for like a cruiser gear, but you don't feel like you really need it.
Yeah.
Spending most of your time between 3rd and 4th.
I do wish there wasn't so much of a drop between 3rd and 2nd, because once you're going, you kind of only have 2 gears to work with.
Yeah, that's true. Luckily you don't, you know, you can use 3rd, you know, very easily, even in slow speeds.
Well,
But
it has
yeah,
so much power that 3rd kind of fills in that gap on its own.
yes, yeah, you can spend most of the time probably just in 3rd alone. So it's not bad. It would be interesting if they had a dog leg in this, because then 3rd and 2nd would be right there. But that's just not the configuration it came with. I'll try to think if I have any more urgent, pressing thoughts on this car that I wanted to say. Certainly this is very fun, because, you know, my dad always talked about almost buying that TR6, and just to like sort of relive what his decision may have been like at that time. If anyone has a Datsun 510 out there, I'd travel over land, sea, and air to drive it. Oh yeah, that's a turn. I saw that little path in the front. Dash is rein it in, bring it back. Your throws are fairly long, but they're very nice. The gear position is really perfect. The shifter's perfect. I'm just driving this car literally for the first time, and I know exactly where the shifter is. And the tachometer works, which is great. That's certainly more
important
than the speedo. You have oil pressure, you have fuel, you have your temperature, and you have your amperage or voltage here. Very simply laid out dashboard. I do love the buttons for the wipers, and I guess the lights. Are our lights on right now?
No, the lights are I think this toggle on the side.
Oh, okay. Which way do you pull it?
Just down, I think.
Okay. So there we go.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, they might be on. The bright red paint also helps during the day in letting others know you're coming. But you just ease on into the gas and you get that nice throaty punch. Twin exhaust in the back, absolutely beautiful. My nose is just dripping snot, which feels perfect. You know, looks good on camera, and it shows that we're not faking our weather conditions here. This is a real driving experience. But I can't imagine just using this thing as a daily driver. I mean, trying to drive this thing on a highway is...
yeah, it is a go-kart.
Now granted, you probably would have the power to keep up, but driving alongside SUVs or tractor trailers...
Yeah, too much shake.
Too much shake, you're so low. I mean, with this conditions, you have no rear visibility whatsoever. So you're really at the mercy. I'm not sure if this car had a crumple zone or not. But granted, you do have a long hood, so if you get in an accident, at least you got a bunch of metal in front of you. And you have quite a bit of room in front of your knees here. It's not like you're right up against the dashboard. I actually pulled the seat forward a little bit to be able to get a little bit better action on the clutch. Brakes feel pretty solid. I believe they're discs in front and drums at the rear. Certainly you got, you know, enough power to stop. I'm not sure if they're assisted or not. They actually feel better than in my Fiat, which I believe are not power assisted, even though they're four-wheel disc.
I'm not certain what they are.
And the wipers, you know, for all the shit that British electronics get, I guess when compared to Italian electronics, it's not, you know, that big of a step. You can argue which is better or worse, but these wipers are pretty impressive, actually, the action on them. Dainty little things. Now, famously, the MGB has 3 wipers, which is absolutely hilarious. And this only has 2, but they get the job done. Or, you know, aside from the lack of a defroster.
Yeah, that's more me just not knowing what button to fiddle with. I mean, it's also entirely possible it doesn't have it.
Yeah. There's a manual choke. So it has that sort of retro.
You can just go straight through to the
oh, really?
driveway. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll loop around. A little bit of squeak there. Yeah, you look out, you know, I'm so focused on looking forward, and you look out the side and you realize just how incredibly low you are. I can't see anything. We'll crash into a private property, no trespassing sign to end the review. Be hilarious. Well, I would like to experience this on a sunny day, but I don't know if I'd be any less terrified. But wow, what an immense pleasure and honor to drive this. Roll down the window here. Thank you so much to Dash and his family for keeping this thing running and alive. And you know, it feels like it's actually in pretty good. What do they call it? Fiddle? I forget the British word. Pretty good frick? Fiddle. Pretty good fiddle. It's in pretty good fiddle. That's the word. That's T's, not D's. Let's try to pull in here with our lack of power steering and park it. Look at that. Didn't stall it once.
Beautifully done.
We got a Blaupunkt radio, so that's nice. A little post-war German-English cooperation. How do I turn my wipers off here? Push the button.
Yeah.
All right, those are down. Lights are off. We're in first gear. We'll shut her down here. The key is right in the middle, which is funny. It's somehow bridging the gap between Porsche and all other cars. Let the clutch out there and just sit for a moment. So, boy, that was an absolute thrill. The time just flew by.
A great car.
Yeah, you could spend hours just getting used to this thing and getting more comfortable with it and being able to press on a little bit more in it. But just an absolutely sensational. And the last thing I'll say is for a cheap car, very well appointed interior. These, like, I don't know if this is real leather or vinyl, but very comfortable. Door cards all still intact with maybe a couple little help along the way. But thanks for coming along with us, and this was, boy, something I've been looking forward to for a long, long time, so thanks to Dash and his family. And now we got a Falcon to review and maybe an old BMW, so geez, the gift that keeps on giving. So the show goes on, so still look around and keep out for those. And until next time, Janky do Thanky. Oh yeah, while you're at it, if you'd like, we would love if you'd subscribe to the channel. We're janky, we do things janky, but sometimes that's a good thing. Oftentimes it is, I would argue. And like I always say, it's like, you know, flipping a hobo or a bum. I know those aren't terms you use these days, but you know, I have to say driving this car in the rain with a good buddy reminds me a lot of Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars when he took Norm Macdonald out in that old Survivor Porsche, and they were driving along in the rain. And we're big Norm fans here, and R.I.P. to him. And obviously, if you know him, you love him. And so that reminded me of that. And then my dad, you know, almost buying this car. A lot of just sort of symbolic things for me. So a real treasure and a pleasure and a treat. And if you liked it, please like, comment, subscribe. And if you didn't like it, write us some very heinous, strong-worded comments, as a lot of people have done. One guy wrote, not a review, just talking. So for him, perhaps maybe I'll do a silent review one day where I'll just shut up and, you know, maybe he'll enjoy that more. But anyways, I've rambled on long enough, so until next time, Janky do Thanky. Oh, seatbelts are aftermarket, not originally to their vehicle, but the red is like a great touch. Whew. I talk when I get nervous, can you tell?
That's good. That's kind of what you want.